Welcome to the Smart Thinking Podcast. This is my dad, Ted.
Welcome to the Smart Thinking Podcast. I'm your host, Ted Knightsky. Have you ever had someone say to you, hey, you should check this out, or you need to read this book, or have you seen this show? I get that a lot from people, probably because I also do it a lot to people, but whenever it happens to me, it usually costs me a little bit of money, especially if it's a book, because of that all too convenient Amazon app. Well, last week, my brother-in-law and close friend Andrew was over for dinner, and he said to me, have you heard of NotebookLM? I said no, and he went on to explain it to me, and I have to be honest, I was like, it sounds neat, but I didn't have a lot of time, and didn't really put much thought into it that night. Then, sitting at my desk at home a few days later, I felt a pull to check it out. And oh my goodness, am I glad I did, because, well, this whole episode is about this tool and about our ability to chase into and run into the storms of AI. But before we begin, a couple of quick reminders here for us about being a leader, being a buffalo, being empathetic, and being reflective. You see, each of us, every single day, you know what we're doing? We're leading. And you know how I know? Well, this whole podcast is about someone's influence over me by a simple comment made while having some great pasta. And the comment was, check this out. You see, because every single day we are leading, and leaders are anyone with influence over another person. And I don't have to talk about this too much because in a moment I'm going to have two friends join me who are going to explain my thinking about leadership probably better than I ever have. But a couple of other quick reminders. One, we are buffaloes. We run into the storms that we are facing. And two, we are empathetic and reflective on that journey. You're going to hear much more about this in a moment. But longtime listeners already know these things. Okay, so the tool. Now, before I get into it, I want to share some key learnings I've had this past year. I've had some pretty cool life experiences as a result of my organization's ability to be highly engaged, our staff choosing to be engaged, and Gallup recognizing that we are a very engaged staff. So much so that I got flown to Washington, D.C. this year to accept an award on behalf of the people I serve alongside, and while at that, I got to hear some amazing speakers. So, at this cool conference this summer in Washington, D.C., I heard one of the executives from the United States Chamber of Commerce, and he was talking about the future of the United States and the world in which we live. He was sharing a few things that are very relevant, and being a leader, I wanted to understand the impact of his future forecast on my world, my family, and myself. You see, my strengths are very tightly connected to that idea, the future. Making things happen, being positive and learning while on it. Actually, these are my top 10. Number 1, strategic. Number 2, futuristic. Number 3, activator. Number 4, positivity. That should stun you. 5, learner. 6, belief. 7, individualization. 8, woo. 9, communication. And 10, ideation. What does this mean? It means I can envision things happening in the future, figure out how to do it, get it done through positivity, learn on my journey, communicate it highly effectively, and change is needed. So, how do I use those skills? Well, I was sitting in this environment listening to this man as he was describing the future in the world, and I thought, I have a place in it because those are my strengths. I'm always thinking about purposely applying, especially my learning strength. Anyway, there were 2 things he said that struck me and have stuck with me since I heard him say them. The first was that education systems in the United States will only survive if they are nimble, and they will thrive if they are nimble, especially K-12 and university settings. Meaning, we have to be able to move, change, and swiftly adhere to the new world in which we live. And he said it's all going to be accelerated because of artificial intelligence, or AI. And I thought to myself, how in the world will it be accelerated by AI? Right now, everybody's using ChatGPT just to cheat on tests and papers and rewrite resumes, or they're going to websites and uploading 5 photos of themselves so that they come out looking really, really good. And I couldn't imagine what he was talking about. And then he said something that really got my attention. He said, no one will ever lose their job to AI. They will lose their job to people who know how to use AI. That had been sticking with me forever. But I'm also kind of skeptical by nature when it comes to new technologies. Over the course of my life, I've seen some things come and go very rapidly. I mean, I remember some pretty cool stuff when I was a kid, and for some reason, I just have never adopted to new things quickly. I'm kind of slow to adopt, and I'll even stick to the old format well past its life cycle just to make sure it's really going to stick around. I mean, any of you remember the beta versus VHS wars of our childhood? And that my Uncle Bruce, well, he bet the wrong way and he went beta. He also had one of those gigantic Laserdisc players with the discs the size of records back in the late 70s and early 80s. He was an early adopter. He's always been an early adopter. He's a pretty cool guy. And sometimes it hits and sometimes it misses. So I watched that as a kid and I thought, I don't know. So when the world went from tapes to CDs, cassettes, I was like, we'll see. And I refused to buy a CD player. Stupid. Anyways, when the world went digital, I was like, well, I'll see. Because I had just finally bought all the CDs I'd ever wanted. And now it was on my phone? Ugh. I have almost always bet wrong on technology. However, the internet has always been something that I've excluded from my skepticism. As a matter of fact, thinking back, especially about this episode, I remember when I was a teacher in the early 90s and websites had just kind of started popping up all over the place. And there was this company called Angel Fire. And you could start your own free website and you could add to it with little costs by adding little trinkets. And I had MrNightskyRex.com website. I was so cool. I used to email to communicate with my students, and my students could only do their research online, much to the chagrin of our librarian. Well, that was Mr. Knightsky in the 90s. I was also the king of PowerPoint on my television in my classroom that would roll in on a cart so the kids could see how to take their notes off of this newfangled tool from Microsoft called PowerPoint Slides. Okay. Recently, however, I've been finding myself a little skeptical about this thing called artificial intelligence. First, because of all the movies that scared me to death in the early 2000s. But second, I was like, how could the internet really figure out everything I want to do? How would it know what I need to do? How would it figure things out? And now I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm beyond all in. I'm beyond all in. I want to do everything I can to find out more about AI, all because of a comment made by my brother-in-law while we were eating pasta at my dinner table, linking me to a new tool that he found on a blog post that somebody had sent him. And now I'm going to share it with you because I think it's cool. I think it's insane. It's free. And I'm so glad my brother-in-law reminded me to go look at it. Now, before I share the tool, I have to share a quick story about the day I learned how to use it. I was home alone and playing with the tool, and I was losing my mind. I literally felt like the first time I saw Star Wars on a rainy summer day in Rhinelander, Wisconsin in 1977 when I was 6 years old. As a kid, I could not believe my eyes, and I remember as a 6-year-old being blown away and a little grossed out at the kissing scenes, but insanely excited about lightsabers and spaceships. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. It looked so real. It was like I was actually in the place of space in the theater watching this. I could not believe it. I've been blown away by technology only a few times in my life. Like first time I saw the iPod, I could not believe that you could put 5 records on this little thing and keep it in your pocket. I had been jogging with a Discman ripping around on my waist my whole life. I had been walking around with a Walkman and a hip sack. And now this little thing the size of my hand can hold 5 albums. And today, the simple fact that my iPhone has access to every song ever written and recorded, that I can watch television whenever I want to, that I can take pictures of whatever I want to, that I can join the world in the social media platforms whenever I want to. I've been blown away by technology only a few times in my life, and I will tell you what, if you cannot pick up by the enthusiasm in my voice right now, this past week when I was in the living room playing with, at my desk, this NotebookLM, I was stunned. I literally was getting up and whacking my head in disbelief. The tool allows you to do so much, and I just sat there in a state of flow, all of my strengths glowing as I was rapidly thinking of how to use the tool. Then I heard the back door open, and my beautiful wife Megan came in after a long day of teaching in her middle school. And I was like, get in here right now. You've got to see this. You've got to see this. And she was like, oh no, What did you find? And I started to show her, look at Megan. You can upload anything you're doing, any slide deck, any information. You can upload multiple things, and it does all of these different things for you. And then my son walked in. Mr. Knightsky, 8th grade social studies teacher, walked in, and I did the same to him. Both of them, after a long school day, both looked at me like, and neither of them joined in my nuclear level of enthusiasm. I just kept working and thinking. As a matter of fact, I almost forgot to make dinner that night. And then the next day, I ran a principal network up in Oshkosh at our office, and I had about 50 principals from around the state there. And I ended my day swearing with enthusiasm about the tool and demonstrating it to them, only to have a handful of them look at me the same way, like, holy shit, taki mushrooms, Ted. What did you find? I mean, friends, do you remember the first time you were in a Google Doc with another person who was not in the room, not even in the building, maybe not even in the country, and you were both typing and you could see it happening? Oh, you felt like a wizard. Okay, Ted, take a breath. So what is this thing you're talking about? What's called NotebookLM. It's an AI-powered tool from Google that helps users organize, analyze, and interact with your notes and your documents. It summarizes everything. NotebookLM can summarize complex documents, highlight important sections, and answer specific questions. It generates guides for you to use. It can generate personalized guides, timelines, FAQs, and study guides. It provides creative insight. NotebookLM can analyze notes and suggest new perspectives or connections. It improves collaboration. Teams can share notebooks, contribute in real time, and use AI-generated suggestions. And friends, in a moment, you are about to be introduced to two of my newest best friends from NotebookLM as they share with you why I was so blown away. NotebookLM is built on a large language model. I don't even know what that means. LLMs, like those used in open AIs like GPT. It uses Google's Gemini 1.5 Pro model to analyze, organize, and enhance uploaded materials. And enhance uploaded materials is the part that blows me away. And on top of everything, once you drop and drag everything into notebooks and you click generate, it'll make a podcast. That's right. It'll make a podcast of two people talking back and forth enthusiastically, like they know you, like they were there with you. So I uploaded a deck I have called Ted's Take on Leadership. It's 8 slides. In less than 4 minutes, it created a 15-minute podcast interview. And I want you to listen to this because it's amazing and spooky. It's also a great reminder of who we need to be.
Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And today we're going to be looking at the leadership approach of a really fascinating guy named Ted. He's a CEO and a mayor and a podcaster, soon to be author. I mean, the list kind of goes on and on. And we've got his personal notes on leadership. We've got some articles written about his work, and we even have some clips from his podcast. So our mission today is to really try to figure out what makes Ted's view of leadership tick.
Yeah, it's certainly an eclectic mix of source material.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested to see how all these diverse roles he's had, CEO, mayor, even podcaster, how all of that shapes his philosophy.
Right. And speaking of eclectic, in his notes, Ted mentions that he is a huge music fan. I mean, everything from U2 and the Beatles to Ben Folds and Inhalers.
Wow.
That's pretty wide-ranging taste. Makes me think he's probably pretty good at connecting with all sorts of people, which is, pretty crucial for leadership, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the ability to find common ground, build rapport with people from all different backgrounds, that's essential for effective leadership. It builds trust, it fosters collaboration, all the key ingredients for success.
Okay, I'm just going to pop in here really quick to remind you, these are not real people. This is artificial intelligence.
Okay, so let's dive into Ted's take on leadership. And the first thing that really jumped out at me was his belief that everyone is a leader. It's not just about having, some fancy title or a position.
That's a powerful concept, isn't it? I mean, it really challenges that traditional view of leadership as something that's just reserved for a select few.
Yeah.
This suggests that leadership is really more about influence and the impacts we have on others, regardless of, what our formal roles are.
Exactly. And he even uses this example of, somebody holding a door open for a stranger. That simple act of kindness can influence somebody's day, their mood, maybe even inspire them to pay it forward.
Yeah, it really highlights that ripple effect of our actions. How even small gestures can contribute to a more positive and supportive environment. And, if you think about it, Those everyday interactions are where leadership truly begins.
That's so true. But how do we become better at, leading in these everyday situations? Well, Ted emphasizes two key behaviors: empathy and reflective practice. And he defines empathy as seeking to understand another person's perspective without judgment. Really trying to see the world through their eyes.
Empathy, yeah, it's often cited as a cornerstone of effective leadership. It allows you to connect with your team on a deeper level, understand their motivations, their concerns, and really create a more inclusive and supportive environment.
Yeah, and it can be challenging, right? Especially when you're dealing with people who have very different viewpoints, or you're facing, a high pressure situation. Do you have any thoughts on how to cultivate empathy in those tougher moments?
That's a great question. One technique that I found really helpful is to actively practice perspective taking. So before reacting to a situation or a person, try to step back and consider their point of view. What experiences might have shaped their perspective? What pressures might they be facing? And this deliberate effort to understand can really help bridge divides and foster more constructive dialogue.
That's a really helpful tip. And the other behavior Ted highlights is reflective practice. He believes leaders should constantly ask themselves, what do I need to do differently to support the success of the person in front of me? And what would it be like to be them right now? And what would I need if I were in their shoes?
Those are powerful questions. They really illustrate perfectly how empathy and reflection are intertwined. By reflecting on our actions and considering the needs of others, we can become more effective and compassionate leaders. But there's another aspect of Ted's philosophy that really caught my eye. He uses this really intriguing metaphor of the buffalo.
Oh yeah, the buffalo leader. That's where things get really interesting. He describes how buffaloes, they charge directly into storms. They don't shy away or try to avoid the inevitable. They face it head on.
And he contrasts that with the behavior of cows. They turn away from storms only to get drenched later when they have no choice but to, face the downpour. He sees this as a metaphor for how we approach challenges in life.
So buffalo leaders are those who tackle problems head on, while cow leaders, they try to avoid them, maybe even hoping that they'll just go away on their own.
Exactly. And Ted argues that buffalo approach is far more effective, even if it feels counterintuitive at times. By confronting challenges directly, we learn and we grow more quickly.
But how does this buffalo mentality translate into real-world leadership? What does it look like to, charge into the storm in, say, a business setting?
Well, imagine you're a CEO and your company is facing a major financial crisis. A cow leader might try to downplay the problem, avoid making tough decisions, or blame external factors. But a buffalo leader would acknowledge the severity of the situation, communicate transparently with stakeholders, and develop a bold plan of action to address the root causes.
So it's about being proactive and decisive, even when the situation is difficult.
Precisely. It's about having the courage to face that storm head on rather than being swept away by it.
That's a powerful image. But what about those times when a more cautious approach might be necessary? Are there ever situations where charging in might not be the best strategy?
That's a great point, and it's where the nuances of leadership come into play. While that buffalo metaphor is inspiring, it's essential to recognize that not every situation demands, full frontal assault. There are times when a more strategic approach is required, whether it's gathering more information or building consensus or carefully navigating a complex political landscape.
So it's about knowing when to charge and when to hold back, which probably comes with experience and a deep understanding of the situation, right?
Absolutely. And perhaps that's where Ted's emphasis on reflective practice comes in. By constantly evaluating our actions and learning from our experiences, we can develop the wisdom to discern the most effective approach for each unique challenge.
That makes a lot of sense. So we've got empathy, reflective practice, and this buffalo approach to problem solving. It seems like Ted is building a pretty compelling case for a proactive and courageous leadership style.
He certainly is. And what's fascinating is that he doesn't just stop there. He goes on to describe the essential qualities of a buffalo leader, and they offer even deeper insights into his philosophy.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about these qualities.
Well, Ted believes that buffalo leaders are optimistic, persistent, tenacious, and of course, empathetic. He argues that these qualities are essential for navigating the complexities of leadership and for inspiring others to follow.
That's quite a list. And I'm noticing a theme of resilience and determination running through all of these qualities.
Yes, there's a definite emphasis on grit and perseverance, on the ability to bounce back from setbacks and maintain a positive outlook, even in the face of adversity.
It's almost like he's saying that Buffalo leaders don't just survive the storm, they thrive in it.
Exactly. They embrace the challenge, they learn from it, and they emerge stronger on the other side. And I think that's a really empowering message for anyone looking to develop their leadership skills. And it's interesting how he connects these qualities back to his belief that everyone is a leader. He argues that we should strive to embody these traits in all of our interactions, regardless of whether we hold a formal leadership position or not.
So it's not just about being a Buffalo leader at work, but also in our personal lives, our communities, even in our online interactions.
Precisely. Ted seems to be advocating for a holistic approach to leadership, where our values and behaviors align across all aspects of our lives.
That's a pretty high bar, but I can see how striving for that kind of consistency could have a powerful ripple effect.
Absolutely. And I think it speaks to the idea of leading by example. When we consistently demonstrate empathy, resilience, and a willingness to face challenges head-on, it can inspire others to do the same.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Empathy, reflection, the Buffalo metaphor, essential leadership qualities. Is there anything else in Ted's notes that stands out to you?
There's one more point I'd like to touch on. He mentions the importance of asking ourselves 2 key questions every day.
You mean in addition to the ones about supporting the success of others and imagining ourselves in their shoes?
Yes, those are crucial. But he also suggests asking, what went well in my service to others today? And where can I improve?
It seems like those questions are really about taking ownership and accountability for our actions.
Exactly. And they tie back to the idea of reflective practice. By regularly assessing our interactions and identifying areas for growth, we can continually refine our leadership approach.
It's almost like he's encouraging us to view every interaction as an opportunity for learning and development.
That's a great way to put it. And I think it underscores the point that leadership is a journey, not a destination. There's always room for improvement, and the best leaders are those who are committed to lifelong learning.
I appreciate how Ted's philosophy emphasizes both the personal and interpersonal aspects of leadership. It's not just about achieving individual success. It's about using our influence to create positive change in the world around us.
Yes, and that's what makes his approach so compelling. It's about recognizing that our actions have an impact, and that even seemingly small gestures can make a difference.
He even uses the example of holding a door open for someone, right? It's about bringing those leadership qualities, empathy, courage, proactiveness into our everyday interactions.
Precisely. And by doing so, we can create a ripple effect of positive change, inspiring others to lead with intention and compassion.
You know, now that we've delved into his notes, I'm curious to hear how Ted's philosophy plays out in his actual work. Do you have any insights from the articles and podcast clips we have?
Actually, I do. The articles highlight a few key examples of how Ted has applied his leadership principles in real-world situations. One story that stood out to me involves a major public works project he spearheaded as mayor. It was a controversial project with strong opinions on both sides.
Sounds like a perfect opportunity to put that Buffalo mentality into practice.
Indeed. And according to the articles, that's exactly what he did. Instead of shying away from the controversy, Ted actively engaged with community members, listened to their concerns, and worked tirelessly to build consensus.
So he charged into the storm, but with empathy and a genuine desire to understand different perspectives.
Yes, and the results speak for themselves. The project was ultimately approved, and it's been hailed as a success story for community engagement and collaborative leadership.
That's a great example of how Ted's approach can translate into tangible outcomes. It's not just about inspirational metaphors, it's about putting those principles into action and making a real difference.
And there's another example from his time as CEO that illustrates his commitment to empathy and supporting the success of others. The company was facing some significant challenges, and morale was low.
I can imagine that kind of situation would test anyone's leadership skills.
Absolutely. But instead of focusing solely on bottom-line results, Ted prioritized the well-being of his employees. He implemented a number of initiatives to support their professional development and create a more positive and inclusive work environment.
It sounds like he was really practicing what he preaches, putting people first and recognizing their value as individuals.
Exactly. And according to the articles, this shift in focus had a remarkable impact. Employee morale soared, productivity increased, and the company was able to successfully navigate the challenges it was facing.
So it seems like Ted's approach to leadership isn't just about achieving success for himself. It's about empowering others to reach their full potential and creating a positive ripple effect that extends far beyond his immediate sphere of influence.
I think that's a key takeaway from our deep dive into Ted's philosophy. His belief that everyone is a leader, his emphasis on empathy and reflection, and his Buffalo approach to challenges all point to a style of leadership that is both empowering and impactful.
It's inspiring to see how he's woven these principles into his personal and professional life. And while his approach may not be conventional, it's certainly effective.
And perhaps that's the most important lesson we can glean from our exploration of Ted's leadership philosophy. Authenticity and integrity are paramount. When our actions align with our values and we genuinely strive to lead with empathy and intention, we can create positive change in the world around us.
That's a powerful message, and it's a great reminder that leadership isn't about titles or positions. It's about how we show up in the world and the impact we have on others.
Yeah, it really makes you think about your own approach to leadership, right? Are we charging into the storms in our lives, or are we more like those cows, just hoping the downpour will pass us by? That's a question we all need to grapple with. And, it's not always easy to discern the best course of action, but what Ted's philosophy offers is a framework for approaching those challenges with courage, with empathy, and a commitment to continuous learning.
He certainly doesn't shy away from encouraging people to step up and lead, does he? He even mentions his own podcast, Ted's Smart Thinking Podcast, as a resource for, those who want to kind of dive deeper into his ideas.
Yes, and it's clear from the clips we heard that he's passionate about helping others develop their leadership potential. He offers practical tips, real-world examples, and a healthy dose of inspiration.
It's refreshing to hear someone talk about leadership in such a genuine and relatable way. He doesn't get bogged down in jargon or complex theories. He just cuts to the chase and offers wisdom that anyone can apply.
And that's ultimately what makes his philosophy so powerful. It's accessible, it's actionable, and it resonates with people from all walks of life.
Well, I have to say, this deep dive into Ted's leadership approach has been eye-opening. I'm walking away with a renewed sense of purpose and a bunch of practical takeaways to apply in my own life.
Me too. I especially appreciate his emphasis on leading by example, and the idea that our actions, no matter how small, can have a ripple effect on the world around us.
That's a great point. It's a reminder that leadership isn't about holding a certain position or having a fancy title. It's about how we show up in our everyday interactions, the choices we make, and the impact we have on others.
And it's about embracing those qualities of the Buffalo courage, empathy, and a willingness to face challenges head-on. Not just in our professional lives, but in every aspect of our lives.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from our conversation today?
What's fascinating is how Ted's ideas challenge us to reconsider our everyday interactions. Even seemingly small actions can have a ripple effect influencing those around us. By embracing the qualities of a Buffalo leader, courage, empathy, and proactive problem solving, we can create positive change in our own lives and in the world.
Well said. So, to our listeners, think about the storms you're facing right now. Are you a buffalo charging in or a cow trying to avoid them? And what can you do differently today to lead with empathy and intention? Keep those questions in mind as you navigate the challenges and opportunities that come your way. And until next time, keep charging into those storms and making a difference.
Okay, I don't know what you're thinking right now, but I don't know who those two people are. I've never met them. They're not even real people. That's an AI-generated podcast from my slide deck. Did you hear them? I mean, one, they sound real. They have humor. You can hear them breathe. They say things like, yeah, that's a really good point. Or, what's that all about? They actually sound like fun people, like I'd want to hang around with them. They laugh, and they interact with enthusiasm. The part that blows me away, which is why I put the whole thing on here for you, is because it searched the entire web. It pulled newspaper articles looking for examples of me being a buffalo as a leader, as a mayor, and as a CEO. It actually analyzed the entire podcast. I have 319 episodes, and in 4 minutes it generated this podcast, the 15 minutes long, that makes total sense. And frankly, I think these two have been listening to me my whole life because they very accurately described me. These were PowerPoint slides, just bullets, not full descriptions. It used AI power to look at the entire footprint of Ted Neitzke on the internet and pulled together a very interactive conversation that actually made a lot of sense. They also added in ideas and context that I've not even discussed on this podcast. They even had opinions. What? I hope that you are hearing in my voice the insane enthusiasm that I felt when I first found this and every single time that I have now used this. I literally, even talking to you right now, I feel like I feel like someone came back in a time machine to me. I mean, I guess this is what Abraham Lincoln would have felt like if you'd have put a pair of earbuds in his ears and handed him an iPhone. He wouldn't believe it. I can't believe it. I mean, can you? There was no script for this podcast. I didn't enter what I wanted them to talk about, although you can. I didn't enter what type of tone or voice they would have. I didn't enter anything except for a slide deck, a soulless, heartless PowerPoint slide deck. So now what? Well, I have some ideas for you. I don't care what you do in life, but if you're a teacher, start uploading your slide decks. I uploaded one of my son's units on the progressive era, and I was like, well, this is crazy. I mean, here, listen for yourself.
All right, welcome everyone. Today we're diving deep into the progressive era in the U.S.
Yeah, a really interesting period.
It really is. We're talking 1901 to 1929.
A time of massive change for America.
Absolutely. The Industrial Revolution was in full swing.
Cities were
This has a
exploding in size.
gajillion applications in the classroom. It's got a gajillion applications everywhere. I mean, missed kids who missed class? Here's the podcast that describes everything from the slide decks that you missed. Here is the FAQs. Here's the study guide. Here's a summary of all of the notes taken from whatever you drop into the generator that you want to use. You can actually dump everything into one notebook. Assigned articles, clips, YouTube videos, slide decks, even your own notes. And it will create a study guide with interpretation? I mean, the other tools are pretty amazing, but this podcast feature, holy guacamole. Any document you have, boom, you get feedback from your staff on what we need to do differently. You just upload it in there. It summarizes it. It gives you a really clean 5-8 sentence paragraph, and then it gives you a summary tool document, gives you an FAQ. It gives you suggestions on research, and then, boom, you can drop it in the podcast. And these two interpret it for you, and you can send it out to the staff. You ask for ideas to implement for change amongst the people you work with? Well, guess what? You can drop it in there. It does all that stuff too. And then you can drop it in those two enthusiastic people who will tell you what needs to be done. You have a complicated report? Upload it. You have data? Upload it. You can upload multiple text, reports, presentations. It'll create guides, FAQs, and the podcast. I'm catching myself. I need to take a breath, slow myself down, and help you remember that this is a pretty cool tool and AI is here. Okay, I can't slow down. There are a million applications to this thing. Did you hear them when they listed the music I like and how that allows me to build relationships with a variety of people because of the eclectic choices of bands that I have? How in the HE double hockey sticks did it do that? That's insane. You know what? Who cares how it did it? This is just the beginning of this type of application. But as those two reminded us, buffaloes charge into the storms they are facing, and they move. This type of technology is incredible and so helpful. This will never replace me, but it will make me stronger. It will enhance my ability to serve you and others. Faculty meeting minutes uploaded and explained with the feedback that was given from the staff. I even took time to upload my own 34 strengths report from Clifton and Gallup, and I was blown away. Tim Hodges, if you're listening, you're going to get a copy of the podcast from that strengths report. Okay, this is the type of tool that'll make things better. Your communication, your record keeping, your interpretation of information, the application of AI, the ability to summarize, the ability to send other people the information that they need in order for them to be successful and understand complicated materials. And finally, the ability for you to help others. AI is a storm. Whew. It is big, and it is coming. And what are you going to do? It's more than just about making nice pictures or writing content. It is ever evolving, and every single day it's getting more applicable and more interesting. Remember, no one's going to lose their job to AI. We're only going to lose our jobs if we don't use AI or know what we're doing. So charge into this storm and challenge it head on. Go play around with this tool. It's amazing. Because you know what? That's what leaders do. We don't sit and wait for it to catch up to us and then feel haunted or we're going to be replaced. No, we see it, we face it, and we go to it. So let's do some smart thinking. List applications you have for NotebookLM. Describe your wonderings around applying AI in your work. and list your worries about applying storm-generating technologies like AI for your future. That's it. That's the Smart Thinking Podcast. Hey, as always, thank you for listening, and please make sure to share and rate this episode. Shoot me some feedback or a note if you'd like. I always enjoy getting those. And of course, I really, really appreciate you listening. I think this podcast might be a little different than the other 319 because I'm just sharing with you in live time something I discovered just a few days ago. And the reason I felt compelled to do this one instead of the gratitude one that I had planned was because I just couldn't wait. I couldn't wait to share this with you because I think that once you get in there and start playing around with it, you'll find 100 different ways to use it that I have not even yet thought of. And I hope you do, because I think that this tool, as well as many of the new tools coming our way, are really going to help us help others. And finally, thank you to the Well Pennies for their amazing music. I do really, really appreciate each week when I get to play their music for you as you head into work, go home, or as one of you once sent me, Ted, I fold the laundry on Sunday nights listening to the podcast. So if you're folding, I hope this was long enough or short enough. All right. One last thing. I want you to Google CISA 6 AI to find our offerings that can help you. I work with this amazing guy, John Groff, and he's doing some great work to help schools understand the power of AI. If you don't work in a school, you can attend these lessons too and learn to understand how artificial intelligence can be used to your benefit, to benefit those that you serve every single day, and help you get ahead of it. And remember, the fastest way into the AI storm is to run through it. All right, closing out. This is insane to me. I mean, all I can think about is how I would use this when I was a teacher. And I was thinking about all the different powerful ways to use it. And then it reminded me of a little story about my daughter, Grace. My daughter, Grace, is in college. She's at the Loyola University of Chicago campus in Chicago. I think that's in the title, Ted. Anyways, she is a history major and an education major. And she reminds me frequently that she is a double major. Most of what she is learning can quickly and easily be captured using ChatGPT. And she uses that feature sometimes to make her work better. As a matter of fact, both of my kids have told me that they will take their work and ask Chat to make it more research sounding or more professional or to check it for grammar or to do this or to do that. Well, then one day this year, Gracie called me up in late fall and told me she had a cool project from a professor. In her history class, the professor said, I know you're all using AI for your papers, and I want you to. As a matter of fact, I expect it. I expect that you use ChatGPT and other AI tools. Grace said, I was kind of surprised when she said that out loud because I thought it was just kind of an unspoken thing that we use these things, but we didn't tell anybody we were using them. The professor then said that they would be graded on their use of AI in the history class. As the professor was talking, she thought, this is kind of baloney that you're allowing us to use the internet to do our work. But then Grace told me, it's actually really hard the way she has it set up. She said that the professor is grading us on our questions and how well ChatGPT wrote the work off of our question. This is genius. Because you know what? Historians are researchers. They have to ask great questions to discover history. And this professor understands that. She also understands that we are going to have to write out our answers in the future instead of using the computer, which is why all of Gracie's exams in the same class are in the old, cool blue notebooks. But this professor was all about learning through inquiry, using the technology instead of just ignoring it, and ensuring that kids get the information in a new way, finally, by flipping the script. Well, that's what we do. The world around us seems to be skeptical, disengaged, and sometimes dreary. Let's flip that script, creatively using tools like NotebookLM, and charge into the storms we are facing. If you ever saw the movie Back to the Future, Marty McFly had to drive his time machine into a storm so he could get back to Doc. Well, we don't have that. We have mindset, and it's time to charge. Like Gracie's professor, the content is all there. Now we have to unlearn and relearn quickly, and we have some amazing tools to help us. Each day, be different, and that is to be Buffalo.
Welcome to your life. There's no